welcome to this deep dive
Okay.
about daylight saving time.
Yeah.
So, we all go through this thing, right? Twice a year,
Right.
we're changing our clocks forward and back.
Yeah.
Are we gaining an hour? Are we losing an hour?
Right.
And we always hear about this.
Yeah.
Is this really helping farmers? Is this a thing about farmers?
Yeah.
Well, we actually dug into some articles from NBC News and the old Farmer's Almanac.
Oh, cool.
And the truth is,
what did you find out?
way more interesting than I even thought it would be.
I bet.
Yeah.
It is a fascinating story.
Yeah.
And that whole farmer thing,
Yeah.
total myth.
Oh, really?
When daylight saving time was first officially adopted in the U.S. during World War I, farmers were some of its biggest opponents.
So wait, if it wasn't about farmers, what was the point?
Okay, so picture this.
Okay.
It's 1918.
Okay.
We're in the middle of World War I.
Yeah.
Resources are scarce. The idea behind DST was to conserve energy, specifically coal,
Okay.
by shifting the clock forward an hour during the summer months.
Okay.
It was a wartime measure born out of necessity.
So instead of just early bedtime,
Right.
it was like a national energy saving campaign.
Exactly.
Right.
And to drive that point home, the old Farmer's Almanac mentioned these postcard campaigns,
Oh, wow.
urging folks to change their clocks for the war effort.
Uh-huh.
Can you imagine Uncle Sam popping up in your mailbox telling you to move the hour hand for victory?
That's kind of hilarious,
Right.
but also kind of clever, I guess. But it does sound like daylight saving time caused a lot of confusion at first.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the Uniform Time Act of 1966
Okay.
that things started to get standardized. That act basically set the guidelines for when DST starts and ends,
Okay.
the second Sunday in March and the first Sunday in November,
Got it.
creating a more unified system across the country.
But even with the act, it's not like everybody's on board with changing the clocks, right?
Right. Some states like Arizona and Hawaii
Okay.
opted out of DST entirely. They just stick to standard time year-round.
Interesting.
Which, if you think about it,
Yeah.
highlights this ongoing tension
Okay.
between standardizing time for a modern society and respecting the diverse needs and preferences of different regions.
Well, speaking of modern society,
Yeah.
let's
fast forward.
fast forward to the present day.
Okay.
The NBC News article mentioned that daylight saving time ends this Sunday, November 3rd at 2:00 a.m.
Okay.
So good news for you. You get an extra hour of sleep this weekend.
Enjoy that extra hour.
Okay.
But speaking of sleep,
Yeah.
it's actually one of the biggest points of contention in the current debate over DST.
Oh, yeah. I remember reading about that.
Yeah.
Something about messing with our natural sleep patterns or something.
It all comes down to our circadian rhythms, our internal biological clocks that regulate our sleep-wake cycles and other bodily functions.
Okay.
When we abruptly shift the clock forward or back, it creates a mismatch between our internal time and the external environment.
So our bodies are saying it's time to sleep.
Right.
But the clock's saying, no, it's time to be awake.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And research is increasingly showing that this mismatch can have some pretty significant health implications. For example, one study found that people whose clock time is misaligned with the sun had a 22% higher risk of fatal car accidents.
Wait, 22% higher?
Yeah.
That's a huge increase.
It is.
I never realized the impact could be that serious.
It's a pretty sobering statistic. And it really raises the question, are the purported benefits of DST, like reduced crime and energy savings, worth those potential risks?
Right.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
Yeah, okay.
Wow. I'm actually kind of shocked by that car accident statistic.
Yeah.
It makes you think twice about, falling back this weekend.
Yeah.
But okay, so some folks want to get rid of daylight saving time.
Right.
Others think it's fine. What are the main arguments on each side?
Well, the proponents of permanent daylight saving time argue that it would boost the economy by giving people more daylight hours for shopping and recreation. They also claim it would reduce crime rates because there's more light in the evenings, and even encourage people to be more active outdoors. All good things, right?
Sure. On the surface, it sounds great.
Right.
More sunshine, more time for activities, less crime.
Yeah.
What's not to like?
Well, the concerns mainly revolve around the potential negative health effects,
Okay.
particularly during the winter months.
Okay.
Remember, If we make DST permanent, that means sunrise would be much later in the winter. Some studies suggest this could lead to increased rates of seasonal affective disorder, sleep deprivation, and other health problems related to that mismatch with the sun's natural rhythm.
So it's like a trade-off between economic benefits and potential health risks.
Yeah.
It's tough to say which side weighs heavier.
It's a complex issue.
Yeah.
And those who oppose permanent DST also point out that the energy savings argument is debatable.
Oh, really?
Some studies have actually shown that extending daylight hours in the evening can lead to increased energy consumption.
Really?
Because people use more air conditioning and lighting.
So it's not even a clear-cut win for energy conservation.
Right.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And it reminds me, the old Farmer's Almanac article really dove into the history of how farmers have been pushing back against DST for years.
Right.
It's not just about the cows needing to be milked at a certain time, though that is a factor, but also the safety concerns of having farm workers out in the fields before sunrise.
It's a great example of how a policy that might seem beneficial on a larger scale can have unintended negative consequences for specific groups of people.
Right.
And that ties back to what we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
The tension between standardizing time and respecting the needs of diverse communities.
It feels like this whole daylight saving time debate is a microcosm of a much bigger conversation about our relationship with time in the 21st century.
Right.
We're constantly trying to optimize and manipulate time to squeeze more productivity out of each day. But are we losing something important in the process?
You've hit on a really crucial point.
Yeah.
This isn't just about clocks and calendars.
Right.
It's about how we structure our lives, how we prioritize our well-being, and how we define progress.
Yeah.
Are we so focused on efficiency and output that we've forgotten the importance of aligning ourselves with the natural rhythms of day and night?
And what about the Sunshine Protection Act?
Oh, yeah.
What's the latest on that?
Well, as we mentioned before, the Senate passed it back in 2022.
Right.
But it's been stalled in the House ever since. So for now, we're still stuck in this time change limbo.
Okay.
Which, is kind of fitting in a way.
Yeah.
It reflects this uncertainty we're facing about how to best manage time in a world that's constantly changing and demanding more from us.
So where do we go from here? It feels like this discussion has opened up more questions than answers.
I think that's a good thing.
Really?
It means we're engaging in critical thinking, challenging assumptions, and recognizing the complexity of these issues. And who knows, maybe by having these conversations, we can start to imagine new and better ways of relating to time that benefit everyone.
Okay, so if we could hit the reset button on timekeeping, what would that even look like?
That's a fantastic question.
Yeah.
And one that deserves its own deep dive.
Okay.
But I think a good starting point is to ask ourselves,
what if instead of trying to control time, we focused on working with it?
Okay.
What if we prioritized alignment with natural rhythms, individual needs, and community well-being?
It's almost like we need a time revolution.
Maybe we do.
Yeah.
And maybe, just maybe, that revolution starts with each of us becoming more aware of our own relationship with time and making choices that support our health and happiness.
I have to say, when I requested this deep dive on daylight saving time, I was expecting a straightforward history lesson and maybe a debate about the pros and cons. I did not expect to end up pondering the meaning of time itself.
And that's the beauty of a deep dive, right?
Yeah.
It's about exploring a topic in a way that sparks curiosity, challenges our assumptions, and leaves us with more questions than we started with.
I'm definitely feeling a lot more informed and a lot more thoughtful about how I spend my time.
That's great.
Thanks for guiding us through this. It's been truly enlightening.
Yeah, I think a lot of listeners can relate to that feeling,
Starting with a simple question and ending up
down the rabbit hole.
Down a rabbit hole of fascinating insights.
Yeah.
And this deep dive has definitely given us a lot to think about.
It really has. It highlights how something as seemingly mundane as like changing our clocks can connect to these bigger questions.
Right.
About health, societal norms.
Right.
And even our relationship with the natural world.
So for the listener who's maybe feeling a little overwhelmed by all this time talk, what's the one key takeaway you hope they remember?
Pay attention to your body.
Okay.
How do you feel after the time change?
Yeah.
If that shift to or from daylight saving time leaves you feeling especially drained or out of sync, maybe that's a sign to advocate for change, or at least to adjust your own schedule.
Yeah.
To prioritize your well-being.
Okay.
We may not be able to control national policy, but we can take charge of our own time.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
It's easy to feel powerless when it comes to these bigger systems.
But we can still make choices that support our own health and rhythm.
Absolutely.
Maybe I need to rethink that early morning workout after the time change.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe those individual choices can spark larger conversations and eventually lead to more human-centered policies around timekeeping.
So instead of it being something that's done to us, it becomes something that we actively engage with and question.
Precisely. Awareness is the first step.
Well, on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into daylight saving time.
Okay.
We've explored its history, the ongoing debate, and even touched on some pretty profound philosophical questions about time itself.
It's true.
Hopefully you're feeling a lot more informed about this twice-a-year ritual, and maybe even a little more empowered to think about your own relationship with time.
I love that.
Yeah. And here's one final thought to leave you with.
Okay.
As we head into this time change, take a moment to imagine, if you could design timekeeping from scratch, what would it look like?
Wow.
Would we still have standardized time zones?
Right.
Would our schedules be more aligned with the sun?
Yeah.
Or tailored to individual needs and lifestyles?
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong answer.
That's a good point.
But it's a thought experiment.
Yeah.
That might just spark some fascinating insights.
That's a great challenge.
So as you change your clocks this weekend, maybe you'll change your perspective on time as well.
I like it.
Thanks for diving deep with us, and we'll catch you on the next episode of The Deep Dive.